I knew something was off the moment Jessica's manicured hand clamped down on my arm like a vice. Mr. Thompson, she called, syrupy sweet, dragging me toward her boss. I'd like you to meet my new mother-in-law. This is Dorothy. She's currently between jobs. The pause before those words, between jobs, was deliberate. The kind of pause that invited pity. But what really made my chest tighten was the smile that followed, sharp as broken glass. Actually, she's been unemployed for quite a while. Bit of a loser, really. She said it loud enough for people nearby to hear, and she said it like it was a joke. The kind of joke you make to elevate yourself by stepping on someone else. I smiled. Because that's what polite women do, even when someone spits on your dignity in front of a room full of people. Let me take you back. That moment in the ballroom wasn't the beginning, it was the boiling point, the explosion. The real story began 6 months earlier when my only son, Michael, came home glowing like a teenager and told me he was engaged. Her name was Jessica Parker. From work, he said, "She's brilliant, Mom, driven. You're going to love her." I wanted to. I really did. Jessica worked at Thompson and Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. Account manager, corner office, designer heels. From the beginning, she made it clear she was very proud of where she'd landed, and just as clear about what she thought of people who weren't climbing the same ladder. At dinners, she'd take calls mid-bite, waving off apologies with a smug, "When you're building a career, time is money." She never asked about my work, never asked what I'd done before retiring, just assumed that because I was no longer in the game, I had never played. The wedding planning was difficult. Jessica had an opinion about everything, from the shade of napkins to which cousins should be invited, and especially about my role. "I think it would be better if Dorothy kept a low profile," she told Michael while I was in the room, not even bothering to lower her voice. "She's not really familiar with professional networking." That stung more than I let on, because I had spent 30 years running one of the most successful logistics firms in the region, built it from the ground up with my late husband, turned it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. But I bit my tongue. Michael was in love, and I wasn't going to be the bitter mother-in-law who ruined things. Fast forward to the wedding reception. The ballroom was a glittering sea of silk and champagne. I was dressed in my best navy gown, pearls for my anniversary with Michael's father around my neck. I thought I looked respectable. Grandmotherly, even. Until Jessica decided to use me as her punchline in front of her boss. Mr. Thompson's face didn't hide his reaction. "Unemployed," he repeated, giving me a glance that skimmed right past curiosity and landed squarely on discomfort. Jessica was practically beaming. I'm sure she thought she'd won something. But what she didn't know, what she hadn't bothered to find out, was who I really was. I wasn't just some retiree. I was Dorothy Walsh, founder and CEO of Walsh Enterprises, the very same company her firm had been courting for a year and a half, desperate to land a contract. I played my part well, though. I smiled warmly, asked Mr. Thompson about his challenges in the industry. He perked up instantly, glad to have someone speak his language. I casually brought up market saturation, digital disruption, competition from bigger firms. His eyes lit up. Jessica stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Later, while Michael and Jessica danced their first dance, I sat at my table nursing flat champagne and thinking. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman beside me, leaned in. "She was a kind child once," she whispered, speaking of Jessica. "Shared her crayons, protected the quiet kids. I wonder what happened to that little girl." I didn't respond right away. I was watching Jessica move from table to table, charming influential guests, shaking hands, networking at her own wedding like it was a business conference. I wanted to say, people grow up, but the truth was, some people just get sharper, not kinder. I stepped out onto the terrace to breathe. Cool September breeze. Quiet. Until I heard her voice. "Jessica," on the phone. "It went perfectly," she was saying. "He totally saw me as the professional one, especially compared to the mother-in-law. You should have seen her." Laughter. "A loser, honestly. Small town and totally irrelevant." Then another call. This time to someone she called Babe. Not Michael, not even close. The thing about overhearing someone's private words is it forces you to see them for who they really are. I stood there in the shadows, listening as she tore me apart again and again. And in that moment, something shifted. I realized I'd been playing a role. The nice mother-in-law, the accommodating one, the quiet one. But I hadn't gotten where I was in life by staying quiet. And I wasn't going to let Jessica write my story. Not anymore. I returned to the reception composed, face serene, voice calm. No one could see the storm that had settled in my chest. Michael found me by the bar, smiling as he loosened his tie. Jessica wants to introduce you to more of her work friends, he said, handing me a glass of wine. I accepted it with a gracious nod. How thoughtful, I replied, though I think I've met enough of her colleagues for one night. He paused, sensing something in my tone. Everything okay? He asked, brow furrowed. I smiled and touched his cheek. Just tired. It's been a big day. The next morning, I was at my desk by 7 a.m., coffee in hand, legal pad open. 30 years in business had taught me that revenge wasn't loud or messy. It was measured, calculated, and always backed by data. Jessica had made a crucial mistake. She underestimated the one person in the room who'd spent decades studying human behavior under the guise of logistics. My first call was to Patricia, my executive assistant of over a decade. I need a confidential briefing on the Thompson account team, I said, and pull everything you can find on Jessica Parker. She's just married into the family, and I'd like to understand what kind of person she is. Patricia knew better than to ask why. By Tuesday morning, I had a complete dossier on Jessica, her resume, her social media history, her company reviews. But what stood out most were her expense reports, travel charges that didn't match her calendar, client dinners that coincided with personal milestones, Instagram photos taken poolside at resorts she claimed were business conferences, nothing illegal. But ethically, it painted a clear picture. Her professional performance? Adequate. Consistent. But nowhere near the rainmaker image she projected. Her ambition was real, yes, but her instincts were flawed and her sense of strategy relied more on optics than substance. In short, she was a facade. Polished, controlled, empty. I gave it until Wednesday before making my move. I called Patricia again. Schedule a meeting with Mr. Thompson and his team, I said. Tell them the CEO of Walsh Enterprises wants to discuss a potential partnership, and make sure Jessica is present. Thursday afternoon, I walked into Thompson & Associates wearing a tailored navy power suit and my late husband's favorite pearls. I hadn't worn either in years, but today was a special occasion. Their receptionist, young and bright-eyed, offered me coffee with the kind of politeness reserved for royalty. Ms. Walsh is here for her 2 o'clock, he announced into his headset, then turned back to me, clearly aware he was in the presence of someone who mattered. From the waiting area, I could see Jessica at her desk, focused on her screen. She hadn't noticed me yet. Good. I wanted to watch her face the moment the truth landed. Mr. Thompson arrived on time, flanked by 2 other executives, likely part of their pitch team, and trailing behind them, Jessica. Her confident stride slowed the moment she spotted me. Her face morphed through several shades of panic before she managed to plaster on a professional smile. Mrs. Walsh, Mr. Thompson said warmly, extending his hand. It's an honor to finally meet you. We've been hoping for this opportunity for quite some time. The pleasure is mine, I said, though I prefer Ms. Walsh in professional settings. We sat. The room was quiet, tense. Jessica remained standing for a beat too long before pulling out a chair and sitting stiffly beside her boss. She had no idea what was coming, but she knew enough to be afraid. Mr. Thompson launched into his pitch, rattling off metrics and marketing strategies. I let him go on for about 5 minutes before gently raising a hand. Before we move into proposals, I said, I believe there's something we need to discuss about one of your employees. Jessica's head snapped toward me. Mr. Thompson blinked. I'm sorry? I turned to Jessica and smiled. You introduced me at the wedding as your unemployed mother-in-law, referred to me as a loser, I believe, in front of Mr. Thompson and several colleagues. Then later, you called your mother, your sister, and someone named Babe to share your version of events. Unfortunately, you were unaware that I am the CEO of the company your team has been chasing for over 18 months. The silence was deafening. I have documentation, I continued, pulling out a neat folder from my briefcase. Expense reports, social media screenshots, LinkedIn embellishments, misrepresented dinners, fabricated business travel, all attached to your employee, Jessica Walsh. Jessica gasped. Dorothy, I can explain. I'm sure you'll try, I replied, still calm. But the issue here is not just what you said about me. It's that you've demonstrated a pattern of dishonesty, manipulation, and poor ethical judgment, which makes me question whether Thompson & Associates can be trusted with Walsh Enterprises' brand. Mr. Thompson leaned forward, eyes wide. Are you saying you've already decided not to move forward with the contract? I gave a small, polite smile. I'm saying I've decided to reevaluate whether your company shares the values we prioritize: honesty, integrity, respect. Jessica stood abruptly, voice high. You're trying to ruin me over a joke. This is insane. I turned to her, expression cool. No, Jessica, you ruined your own reputation by choosing arrogance over kindness. You just happened to pick the wrong target. Jessica's chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stood, her face pale and furious. This is personal, she hissed. You're only doing this because I embarrassed you. I met her gaze without blinking. Yes, you did embarrass me, in front of your boss, your colleagues, and our entire family. But this, I gestured to the folder on the table, is not personal. This is professional. You see, I built Walsh Enterprises from the ground up, 30 years of sweat, sacrifice, and ethics. So when I consider working with a company, I do my homework. And if one of their employees has a pattern of dishonesty, it becomes a business risk. I don't tolerate risks I can't control. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, looking between us like a man who'd just realized the chess game had been played entirely without him. Ms. Walsh, he said slowly, I had no idea there was any connection between. That's the problem, I said gently. You didn't know because Jessica never told you. She was too busy trying to climb the ladder by cutting others down, including me. The second executive, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, flipped through one of the documents I'd laid on the table. This hotel stay, it's billed as a conference, but the reservation was made in her maiden name and the Instagram tags are all leisure-based. There's no mention of work anywhere. Jessica tried to protest, but the words stuck in her throat. Her usual confidence had drained completely, leaving behind only desperation. It was a mistake, she mumbled. Everyone pads things a little. That's just how it works. Not with us, I said firmly. And not when you're representing a company asking for a $12 million contract. That number hit like a thunderclap. Mr. Thompson blinked. 12 million? Over 3 years, I confirmed. A full rebrand for our southeastern market expansion. It was yours to lose. Jessica sank back into her chair, visibly trembling now. The game was over, and she'd lost badly. I stood, gathering my documents and returning them to my briefcase. I'll give your team time to consider how you'd like to proceed, I said. But I'll be evaluating your company not just on capabilities, but on the character of your team. As I walked toward the door, I paused and looked back. Jessica, you may want to update your LinkedIn profile. Something tells me your job title is about to change. I left the office without looking back, the click of my heels echoing down the polished hallway. That evening, just after 7:30 p.m., my phone rang. Michael. I took a deep breath and answered. Mom, what the hell happened? His voice was tight, panicked. Jessica came home in tears. She says you got her fired. I sipped from my wine glass before responding. I didn't get anyone fired. I attended a meeting during which some facts were presented. Jessica's employer made their own decisions. She said you ambushed her. She said a lot of things, I replied evenly. Like how I was a loser, how she made sure her boss knew I wasn't like the small town people. She also made a few interesting phone calls on the hotel terrace during your wedding. There was a long silence on the other end. Wait, what phone calls? One to her mother, one to her sister, and one to someone she called Babe, which seemed odd considering she'd just married you. Michael let out a shaky breath. You're telling me she's been lying about the job, the expenses? I'm telling you that I compiled records, I said. Receipts, social posts, timeline inconsistencies. Her employer verified the rest. Another pause. I could hear Jessica's voice in the background. Sharp, defensive. Michael muttered something to her, then came back on the line. She says you're being vindictive, that you couldn't take a joke, so you destroyed her career. I closed my eyes. This part hurt more than I'd expected. Michael, do you really believe I'd sabotage someone's livelihood over a joke? Or are you beginning to see what kind of person your wife really is? I don't know, he whispered. I don't know what to believe. I thought I knew her. I softened my voice. You married someone you believed in. That doesn't make you foolish, it makes you human. But now you know more. And you have a choice about what comes next. He was quiet again, then hesitantly. Did you plan all this? I hesitated. It was a fair question. Not at first, I admitted, but when she made it her mission to publicly demean me, to use my perceived irrelevance as a stepping stone, I decided to show her exactly who she was dealing with. And now what? He asked. What happens now? I called Mr. Thompson again this afternoon, I said. Walsh Enterprises will still move forward with the contract. They'll restructure the account team. Jessica's exit will be framed as a mutual decision. She won't be blacklisted. She'll recover if she chooses to learn from it. There was a beat of stunned silence. You're still giving them the contract after all that? This isn't about revenge, I said. It's about accountability and about protecting the integrity of what I've built. I have no desire to destroy Jessica. I just refuse to be her stepping stone. Michael exhaled. I don't know what to say. Then don't, I said gently. Just take some time. Think. You're stronger than you realize. We hung up shortly after. I stayed out on my patio long after the stars came out, the night air cool against my skin. Jessica would survive. People like her always did. But now Michael had the truth. and that mattered more than anything. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Old habits, I suppose. I brewed a pot of strong coffee and sat down at the breakfast table, watching the steam rise from my mug. The house was quiet, filled with the kind of stillness you only get after a storm has passed, or just before the next one rolls in. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt resolved. There's a difference. At around 9 a.m., you say, oh, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Michael. Can I come by tonight alone? My reply was simple, of course. I spent the day preparing, not in the way I had for the meeting with Thompson and Associates, with folders and research and strategic angles, but emotionally. I knew this conversation with my son would be the most important one of all. It wasn't about contracts or reputations now. It was about love and truth. He arrived just after 7 p.m., looking exhausted and older than he had the week before. He walked in without saying a word, and I met him in the kitchen with a glass of iced tea. We sat down at the table where we'd shared countless meals, birthday cakes, and late-night talks about college dreams and life decisions. But this time, we were just two adults facing something uncomfortable together. She's still insisting it was all a misunderstanding, he said quietly. That she exaggerated a little, but never lied. That the babe thing was a joke with her sister. I raised an eyebrow. Did the phone records confirm that? His lips pressed into a thin line. No, they confirmed everything you said. The number belongs to someone named Chris, from her old job in Chicago, not her sister. He didn't cry, but his voice broke just enough for me to reach out and place a hand over his. Michael, I didn't want this. I would have given anything for her to be the woman you thought she was. He nodded slowly. I know, I just keep thinking, was I blind, or did she change? Maybe a little of both, I said softly. We all wear masks in the beginning. The real test is who keeps wearing them after the honeymoon phase ends. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. You know, she never once asked what you did for a living. Not once, just assumed. She made it easy, I admitted. I didn't lead with my title. I didn't talk business. I let her form her own picture of me. And she painted you as a loser, he said bitterly. I smiled sadly. People see what they want to see when it serves their story. He looked at me, his expression full of regret. I'm sorry she treated you that way. I should have seen it. You couldn't have, I said gently. You were in love and you wanted her to be part of the family. So did I. That's why I stayed quiet until I couldn't anymore. He looked down at his hands. What do I do now? That's not a question I can answer for you, I said. Only you know what kind of future you want. But I will say this. Don't let loyalty to a mistake keep you from doing what's right. He was quiet for a long time. We sat there in the soft hum of the evening, nothing but the ticking of the kitchen clock between us. Finally, he looked up and said, You're a lot stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I smiled. That's okay. Most people only see the surface until they have to look deeper, including your wife. I think she thought she could manipulate you, he said. Make you look weak so she'd look stronger by comparison. And for a while she succeeded, I said. But life has a funny way of revealing the truth, especially when people start believing their own performance. He nodded. You gave her a chance to come clean. She just didn't take it. She still could, I offered, but it's up to her now. I've done my part. Later that night, after he left, I found myself reflecting on how things had unfolded. There had been a time when I might have handled the whole situation differently, more passively, more delicately. But something had shifted in me, not out of spite, but out of clarity. The truth is, people will try to define you by their expectations, their insecurities, their ambitions. Jessica had defined me as irrelevant, outdated, insignificant. But the moment I chose to reclaim my voice, I reminded her, and others, exactly who I was. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. In the weeks that followed, Jessica quietly removed herself from the city's social circles. I heard she moved back to Chicago, possibly to restart at a smaller firm. Michael and I stayed close, but he never brought her name up again. I didn't ask. Thompson and Associates did get the Walsh Enterprises contract, just as promised. But they also implemented a new ethics policy and tightened up their auditing process. Sometimes accountability has a ripple effect. As for me, I went back to work, ran my meetings, mentored a few rising stars, and occasionally took long, peaceful walks through my garden. I hadn't lost anything in this whole ordeal. I had only found something I'd forgotten, that you never outgrow your worth, and you should never apologize for protecting your dignity. Thanks for watching. If this story spoke to you or reminded you of a moment when you stood your ground, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories every week. And please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your voice.